Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Memories Podcast. My name is Tim Hannon, and I am joined by
Steve Wirt.
the always knowledgeable Steve Wirt. And in
You
this
flatter me.
episode, I always like to. In this episode, we're going to talk about the championship winning score. We as Pittsburgh fans, we often mope and complain, and the Steelers haven't won a playoff game since, you know, almost 10 years, and the Penguins haven't won a playoff series for X amount of years. And all that's valid criticism. And the Pirates just, stink all the time. And all that's valid criticism. But I think sometimes we should keep things in perspective of how fortunate we've been as Pittsburgh sports fans to have franchises who've captured as many championships as our teams have. When you consider some cities barely have any at all, like imagine being a Cleveland fan and imagine being our
They're
age,
hanging
Steve.
on to that LeBron championship from a couple
Yeah,
years back.
yeah, you could be our age, and if we grew up in Cleveland, our whole lives would have
Our
been
whole
that one.
podcast would just be talking about LeBron winning that winning that game.
It really would be,
Yeah.
right? So, very, very fortunate, very blessed to be Pittsburgh sports fans. And we thought it'd be fun to go through all those championships and look at who was responsible for the hit or the goal or the touchdown that ultimately won the game and the championship for the Pittsburgh team. So that's what we're going to do in this episode is go through all of the championship winning scores. And some criteria here, we're only doing pros, so no college or high school. And we're only counting championships from the three major pro sports teams in Pittsburgh. That would be the Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins. So sorry,
Oh,
fans of the Pittsburgh Pipers and Pittsburgh Triangles. We are not going to talk about the
speaking of the
championship winning.
Pittsburgh Triangles, did you just see at the Australian Open that what's her name, the Oolong, the lady who played for the Triangles? She was there. They brought her out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Maybe she's the one that had the championship winning serve for the
maybe.
Triangles, but we will not cover that. So based on that criteria, there are 16 championships, 6 Super Bowls from the Steelers, 5 Stanley Cups from the Penguins, and 5 World Series titles from your Buccos. And I thought it'd be kind of boring to do this like in straight chronological order, Steve. So instead, I broke up the 16 championship winning scores into 3 categories. So the 3 categories are the firsts, which is like the first time it happened. The second category is I'm calling great players making great plays. And then the third category is just dramatic moments. So that's how we're going to do this. Make sense?
I'm totally confused. No, yes, it makes perfect sense, Tim.
Okay. Um, so the first category is the firsts, the first time that each of these teams won a championship.
You always
And
remember your first, Tim.
you always remember your first time winning a championship, or if you're a Cleveland fan, your only time. Um, so let's start with the very first championship. We go all the way back to the year 1909. The Pittsburgh Pirates are playing the Detroit Tigers in the World Series. And in this World Series is billed as Honus Wagner versus Ty Cobb, the two biggest stars of the day, facing off for a championship. It's like Magic versus Bird before Magic and Bird, right? And the
If
media
both
is
of
really
them were
playing it
white.
up. What's that?
And if both of them were white.
Well, yes, that too. Yeah. So it actually ends up being a really good back and forth series. Both teams seem very evenly matched, and it all comes down to a deciding Game 7 at Bennett Park in Detroit. So much drama, and the Pirates win 8-0. So so much for drama. But hey, who got them that first run that ended up being the game winner? It was probably like a solo home run by Hannes Wagner or something like that, right?
Back in 1908.
So in the top of the second inning, the Pirates have the bases loaded, and up to the plate comes a rookie named Ham Hyatt. Ham Hyatt is not supposed to be playing in this game. The Pirates started Bobby Byrne at third base, but back in the first inning, Byrne had collided with one of the Tigers infielders and he sprains his ankle. So now this rookie named Ham Hyatt has to replace him. And this is only his second at bat of the entire series. And here he is coming up game 7 and the bases are loaded. High pressure situation, but Ham Hyatt comes through. He hits a sacrifice fly deep to center field. Bill Abstein scores, and after that, the route is on. Again, the Pirates end up winning by a bunch of runs. Ham Hyatt plays 6 more seasons in the majors, goes on to live a pretty long life. He passes away in 1963 at the age of 78, but he'll forever have a place in Pittsburgh sports history as being responsible for the first ever championship winning score. One footnote to this, Steve, that Major League Baseball used to have an official stat called game winning RBI. And that was
Sam Hyatt would have been that guy.
Yeah, he would have had one of those in the World Series. That was a controversial stat. And they ended up removing that stat in 1989 because of instances like this, because you had no idea if a game-winning RBI meant that you got like a clutch hit in the bottom of the 9th to win the game, or if you hit a sac fly in the second inning of a blowout like Ham Hyatt did.
Why does it matter? I mean, he still had the game-winning RBI. I mean, whatever.
I think the spirit.
I think it's 1 run or 8 runs.
I think the spirit behind the role or the stat was that they were trying to measure like who is a clutch hitter. You know, like, boy, if this guy had the most game-winning RBIs that season, he must have had a really clutch season, but he maybe or maybe not. So because of that ambiguity, they ended up saying, you know what, we're not going to track this anymore.
They still, I wonder if they track that in hockey, like with game-winning goal.
Like, yeah. I think that would be, well, you might get into the same problem there. We'll actually talk about that here with the Penguins because they're going to come up with a similar situation. But here's a good trivia question, Steve. Because that stat is no longer tracked, do you know who holds and will forever hold the record in Major League Baseball for most game-winning RBIs?
Oh, wow. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Ty Cobb. I don't know.
So the answer to that question is.
Who are you talking about? Keith Hernandez. Keith Hernandez? Keith Hernandez!
Wow.
Keith Hernandez.
You know, he asked me to move a couch once.
So little trivia for you there. That was the Pirates' first game-winning, championship-winning score. Let's talk about the Steelers. In 1974, after 40 years in the wilderness, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're on the verge of their first ever Super Bowl title. Their steel curtain defense is shutting down the Minnesota Vikings in Super Bowl IX. But in the third quarter, they only have a 2-0 lead because Minnesota has a pretty good defense too. The Steelers do catch a break when Minnesota fumbles the opening kickoff of the second half. We talked about that in our Lucky Breaks episode, Steve. That was one where they Roy Girella slipped on the polyturf.
Polyturf. Sounds like a great thing to play football on.
That nefarious polyturf. And that sets up what will become the game-winning score, which is this play.
And Bradshaw giving it to Harris, getting a key block from Mullins, running to the left, turning the corner. He's in there for a touchdown for Pittsburgh. Jerry Mullins giving the block. Mullins pulling and blocking for Franco Harris. Harris running wide to the left, swung into the end zone for the touchdown, and the Steelers are on the board with their first TD of the afternoon.
Right linebacker Wally Hilgenberg, ex-Steeler, and he was the only guy who could have stopped Franco. Jerry Mullins putting a perfect block on him, flattening Hilgenberg. Franco sailing into the corner of the end zone, and the Steelers out in front 8-0.
The Vikings and Steelers each score one more touchdown in that game, so that's why that play is your game winner.
Okay, yeah, because 8-0. Yeah.
As you heard in that audio, Franco gets the game-winning score, but the real hero on that play is Moon Mullins, who makes just a tremendous block on Wally Hilgenberg to free Harris to the outside. And if you watch that play, that's really Franco is going to get stopped there. He's going to the outside, and he's not going to go very far if Mullins doesn't make that block. So Mullins, kind of like most guards, he's one of those like unsung stalwarts of those 1970 Steeler teams. He actually plays on all 4 Super Bowl teams.
I didn't know that. Like guards, you don't hear much about them.
So that's the Pirates and Steelers. Let's talk about the Penguins. Another instance of a Pittsburgh team who had been bad for so long, finally getting a shot at glory, also against a team from Minnesota. The Penguins and North Stars are playing in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And just like in 1909, not a lot of drama for this one, as it also ends up being 8-0. Something about that score, Steve. So the Pirates won 8-0 in their first championship. The Steelers had an 8-0 lead after that Franco touchdown. And then the Penguins win their first Stanley Cup 8-0.
So when it's 8-0 and it's your first championship, you're in good shape.
You're in good shape. Yep.
Yeah.
So who got that very first goal, which was the game winner? Well, 9 seconds into the game, Neil Broughton for Minnesota decides he's going to take a cheap shot on Penguins goaltender Tom Barrasso. And I'm not sure if that was like a calculated thing, like the North Stars thought they could bully the Penguins and assert themselves physically or whatever that hockey nonsense is. But the refs aren't going to allow those kinds of shenanigans tonight. And Broughton goes into the penalty box 9 seconds into the game. That sets up a power play. And Steve, do you remember who gets this goal?
I knew you were going to mention this one, and I don't remember. I keep one. I don't
Take
know.
a guess. Just take a guess.
Oh, let's
3,
see. Penguins
2,
of the 90s.
1.
We'll go with the Wrecking Ball, Mark Recchi. I don't know.
Okay, that's wrong, but it's a good guess. Here is the correct answer.
Still 13 seconds to go, but he's gone more to a defensive posture.
Right point now. Tagging it over to Samuelson. Samuelson shoots it towards net. Scores! The Penguins lead 1-0. Bob Erie might have deflected it in, but the Penguins take the lead. Oh, no. Eddie Spaghetti. Samuelson from a weak shot from the left side. Bob Erie in front. Might have touched it, and the Penguins take the lead 1-0.
So
Bob Erie? Or
no,
Samuelson?
it was Ulf Samuelson who scores the goal. Bob Erie did not tip it. Although Erie, in addition to just about the rest of the roster, does end up scoring a goal in this game. But it's Ulf Samuelson, who, obviously not known as a goal scorer. Ulf only had 31 career goals in 16 career NHL seasons. But this was actually his third goal of that playoffs. So he actually had a little bit of a hot streak going. The Pens dominate the North Stars the rest of the way. They take home their first ever cup. Fun fact, Neil Broughton, the guy that took that really stupid penalty, 4 years later, he scores the Stanley Cup winning goal for the New Jersey Devils and becomes the first ever American player to register a cup winning goal.
Wow. Yeah, I guess Ulf isn't from America.
No, he was not.
Neither was Bob Erie, I don't think.
No, very few American players, especially back then, or good ones at least. So, but yeah, Ulf Samuelson, again, sometimes it's always like those unlikely guys in hockey that get you those important goals. So those were the first time for each of the 3 sports teams. We're going to move into our second category, which, like I said, is going to be called great players making great plays. And most of the guys in this category are going to be very familiar names that pretty much everyone listening is going to recognize. The one notable exception is going to be our first one. It's the 1971 World Series. And the guy that gets the game-winning hit here, it's Jose Pagan. Jose Pagan played for the Pirates from 1965 to 1972. Never really a full-time starter, but a pretty decent hitter. And probably more importantly, a very versatile defensive player. He plays games at every position in the infield. He plays left field. He even catches a game once.
Wow.
So, I mean, he pretty much plays every position.
Pretty good athlete then, yeah.
Pretty good athlete. The 1971 World Series comes down to Game 7 at Baltimore. And the two kind of remembered heroes from this game are Steve Blass, who pitches just an absolute masterpiece, and Roberto Clemente, who hits a solo home run that gives the Pirates a 1-0 lead. But the game-winning hit actually ends up coming off of the bat of Pagan. So what happens is, in the 8th inning, he's up at the plate. Willie Stargell is on first base. And here's what happens next.
Runner going. There's a fly ball to deep left center. Reckman chasing it. Drags it down. Stargell is being waved around. Here comes the throw, and Willie Stargell, it's cut off. Boog Powell cut it off, and Stargell, who was running on the pitch, scores all the way from first base. And Pagan has a double.
Boog Powell for the Orioles makes a really curious decision there to cut off.
I don't know
throw.
if they might have got him at home.
They would have at least had a chance. Boog Powell for the Orioles is standing in front of home plate and he cuts off the throw kind of inexplicably. Like there was no reason to do that. And Stargell,
I mean, what's his name going to end up at third?
I guess that's what he was worried about. Yeah. Like he didn't want him to get a triple out of it. But it's like Stargell probably makes it anyway. But the fact that like, why did he cut that off? I just seems like an odd decision for a guy that was a really good player for the Orioles too.
Well, why was he cutting that? Where was he coming from to cut that off then? Jeez.
He was the first baseman.
Yeah.
So he was coming from first base, I guess.
All the way. Wow.
Jeez. Yeah. But
because that ball was hitting like left center.
Right.
Geez.
Right. So I mean, that's one of those what ifs. Like you'll never know. Could they have actually nailed Stargell at the plate there? But
it's not like Willie Stargell's. I mean, he's obviously a lot younger back then, but it's not like he's the fastest guy in the world either.
Right. And he's coming all the way from first base. So that was a long way to run. That ends up being a big deal. It gives the Pirates a 2-0 lead. It's a big deal because in the bottom of that same inning, the 8th, the Orioles get a run to make it 2-1. So if Stargell doesn't score there, Pagan doesn't get that double, then that game goes into extra innings, and then who knows what happens. So that ends up being the game-winning hit, Jose Pagan.
Not a household name.
Not a household name. Jose Pagan, sadly, no longer with us. He passed away from Alzheimer's disease a few years ago.
Yeah. He had his moment. We'll never forget his moment. That's for sure.
That's right. That's right. So that was 1971. In 1979, the Pirates are again playing the Orioles, and they're again in Game 7 and again in Baltimore. And instead of winning 1-0, this time the Pirates are trailing 1-0 in the 6th inning. And, the 6th inning, that means they're kind of starting to run out of chances here to come back. Like at that point, you can start counting how many outs you have left. So they need to get something going. Bill Robinson is on first base, and at the plate is that guy that had scored the run in 1971. It's Willie Stargell. So we're going to play what happens next. And Steve, see if you recognize the announcer here.
I know who this is because he was totally in the tank for Baltimore here. He really was.
Well, let's hear it.
Baltimore on top 1-0 to Willie Stargell. Hit well, right field. Singleton to the wall, and this ball is gone.
Willie Stargell, the big man. 7 times he had come to the plate in this series with runners in scoring position and failed. But suddenly, and we said this would be a testing inning for the young southpaw, suddenly with one swing in the race in the wake of Robinson's bad hop single, turns it around.
That's Howard Cosell.
I don't think I would have liked Howard Cosell if I would have been like alive and cognizant in 1970. Well, I was alive, but I was like 3 years old. So maybe I was from my crib. I was like, boo, Howard Cosell.
So that home run by Stargell, the Pirates do get 2 more insurance runs and they win the game 4-1 for the World Series title and probably, their final ever moment of glory in our lifetimes and beyond. But so there's that. But because that again, they were down 1-0 at the time, that ends up being the game winner. Stargell, of course, an absolute beast that year, hit a home run when it mattered most. That's really the mark of an all-time great, right? I mean, that's what you want those guys to do in those moments.
I love the windmill windup. You do like
yeah,
go up the bat.
Yep.
I always would pretend to be Willie Stargell in my backyard when I play wiffle ball. I love Willie.
All right, let's go back to the Steelers, Super Bowl 10. The Steelers are clinging to a 15-10 lead in the 4th quarter. They've got the ball in their own territory, and they could really use a big play from one of their playmakers.
It is 3rd down. 4.5 yards to go for the Steelers. Bradshaw's back. He wants to throw. Now he fires for the bomb. And Lynn Swann going for it. Swann pulls it in for a touchdown. Lynn Swann beat his man on a bomb. Swann got a step beyond Mark Washington, who's been on him all afternoon. 64-yard pass, and Bradshaw was hurt on the play.
Yeah, Bradshaw didn't. That was his last play of that game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I don't think Terry remembered. Like, I think I've heard interview. He doesn't remember that game.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a helmet to helmet. That would have been super illegal. That would have been a 15-yard penalty tacked onto that touchdown today. But back then it was just ho-hum. But yeah, Lynn Swann, we talked in our last episode about we did like amazing plays, and Swann had that circus sleeping catch in the same game.
Levitating leap.
Levitating leap. Thank you. Yeah. So
two of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Swann's the MVP of this game. And that was a 64-yard bomb. So clutch. Dallas does get a late touchdown, which is why that ended up being the game winner. There's a great like old Saturday Night Live skit about
moments in gambling history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You remember that. Yeah. And with that late touchdown, Dallas covers the spread.
Yeah.
So,
isn't that's the backdoor cover, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Because like when you score like a garbage time, points.
Yeah. Yep. So the final ends up being 21-17. And here's a fun fact, Steve. So Dallas gets that late touchdown and they're still within one score. They don't have much of a chance, but they have to do an onside kick. So they do an onside kick. Fortunately, the Steelers recover it. Guess who recovers the onside kick for Pittsburgh?
Oh, man, I should remember this. I don't know. John Banaszak. I don't know.
It's Moon Mullins again.
Moon Mullins. Wow, showing up all over the place. Man, it's clutch.
Yeah.
Why would you have a guard on an onside?
I don't know. I have no idea, but he got it.
He's on the hands team.
He's on the hands team. He got the ball. So.
Who's else? Like Roy Girella out there on the hands team.
Yeah. Bobby Walden put the punter out there. Yeah. Well, let's fast forward 3 years to Super Bowl 13. And once again, it's Steelers versus Cowboys. And once again, it's Lynn Swann with the game-winning score in the fourth quarter. So what's happened here is the Steelers score a touchdown, and then they kick off back to the Cowboys. And Randy White, who was wearing a cast, and which may or may not have influenced this play.
Well, John Facenda, it totally did.
He tries to field this kickoff. He fumbles. The Steelers recover. So they've just scored. They've just recovered the ensuing kickoff fumble. And now they decide they're going to go for the kill.
He's going to throw. He heaves up. Swann, touchdown. Lynn Swann, touchdown.
Man,
what an acrobat.
It looked like one of the great catches of all time.
Yeah, Bradshaw hits Swann in the back of the end zone. He makes another leaping catch. Yeah.
That's the circus catch one.
Yeah. So just, Lynn Swann being Lynn Swann. That makes the score 35-17, but Dallas gets two late touchdowns. And they weren't really garbage time touchdowns. Those were actually like almost really got them right back into the game touchdowns. So that play ends up being the game winner. Lynn Swann, Steve, the only guy that makes this list twice.
Nice. He had two game winners in the Super Bowl.
He had two game winners in the Super Bowl. Let's go to, we talked about the 1991 Penguins. Let's talk about the year after that, the 1992 Stanley Cup Finals. The Penguins are in Chicago attempting to sweep the Blackhawks. And in this game, the Chicago kind of had their backs against the wall, and this game ends up turning into a shootout. The Penguins in the third period have just taken a 5-4 lead, but the way this game is going, they know they're going to need more than just a 1-goal lead. So in steps a Hall of Famer to make a Hall of Fame play.
The go-ahead goal here in this hockey game in the third period by Larry Murphy. Here's Francis back now with McEachran 2-on-1. Francis comes in, shoots and scores! Ronnie Francis beats goaltender Hasek like a rented mule. He looked off and beat him on the short side, I believe. And the Penguins now lead 6-4.
Ronnie franchise, just again, great players making great plays. And Jeremy Roenick scores moments later to make it 6-5. And that ends up being the final. So that Francis goal is the one that wins it.
Yeah, and Hasek kind of kept them in that game too, because the Penguins had a lot of chances. Like the Blackhawks just kind of stopped playing defense. They were like, okay, let's shoot it out with them, and that was probably a poor decision on their part.
Ron Francis, I think you talk about like the all-time greatest Penguins, and it's usually that conversation's like Lemieux, Crosby, Malkin, Yager. Ron Francis still at the time of this recording, Steve, is top 5 all time in points, not in Penguin history, in NHL history. He's in the top 5.
But he didn't play his whole career here, and I think that's
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's
he played a lot in Hartford. Who did he play with after us?
Carolina.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So, which was the same team as the Hartford Whalers. So, but man, that trade to get Ron Francis.
Played for Hartford twice.
Well, it's funny too that trade that is often remembered that got Ron Francis and Alf Samuelsson. Those two guys made had the 2 game cup winning goals.
Heck of a trade by Craig Patrick.
It was. It sure was. All right, let's talk about the 2005 Steelers season, which we did a whole episode on. It's a dream season for the Steelers. They go from just being completely dead to being the number 6 seed in the playoffs to making it all the way to Super Bowl 40. That game is in Detroit, and the big story, of course, for that game, it's Jerome Bettis, the Hall of Fame, all-time beloved running back. He's going to get a ring in his final ever game in his hometown. Oh my gosh, this is the stuff they write movie scripts about.
And but I think Lions have never won a Super Bowl, so Detroit kind of adopts the Steelers. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, great stuff. Like we said, we did a couple episodes about that season, then a whole episode just on that game. But what some fans may forget is the fact that Bettis is essentially, at this point in his career, is mostly a backup or like a spot duty goal line running back. And the feature running back that year is a guy named Willie Parker. And people called him Fast Willie Parker because he ran really fast.
Amazing.
Here in
what a brilliant observation on.
Yeah. We were always good at nicknames back then, tried to be very appropriate. Here in Super Bowl 40, though, no one's really running fast. Both offenses look like trash in the first half. The Steelers have a very slim 7-3 lead as the third quarter opens, but they're way backed up in their own end when this happens.
Hines Ward settles right, and they hand it to Willie Parker. Finds a lane. He's on his way. Look out. Quick race, 45-50. Willie Parker, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5. Willie, touchdown! Willie Parker, 75 yards, and this place is a Steeler maniac's haven.
So the play call there is 34 counter pike. And it's maybe the best example of a total team effort in Steelers history. So they'd been setting this up the entire first half with these little dink and dunk passes to Antoine Randall. And Seattle finally gets tired of getting beaten by that. So they slide linebacker Leroy Hill over to kind of guard that part of the field. And Ben Roethlisberger, who, we've said this on this show before, how there's kind of like this false narrative that the Steelers won that Super Bowl in spite of Ben because he had made some mistakes in that game, but it's really not true. Ben sees that this happens and he actually checks into 34 counter pike. If you watch that play, he makes an audible. But the biggest key on the play is left guard Alan Faneca. And remember, this was a play that they ran to the right. So you wouldn't expect the left guard to make the key block here. But Faneca pulls and he absolutely destroys Leroy Hill. And he kind of takes out safety Michael Boulware at the same time. And Parker then outruns the defense for a 75-yard touchdown. It remains the longest touchdown run in Super Bowl history. It's Alan Faneca's signature moment. He's a Hall of Famer. His speed, his agility, his ability to pull like that. It's really all encapsulated in that one play. And I think, Steve, that play really had everything, right? It was like great coaching to set it up all game. The quarterback knowing when to audible, the Hall of Fame lineman making a brilliant block, and then the running back with this world-class speed smoking what was a very good Seahawks defense.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but that's a great way of putting it. Like it really, a lot of things came together and worked, and when it works, it works. And I mean, I know they had been setting that up kind of the whole game, and I guess Seattle finally. Plus, Seattle, I think, had a backup safety in. I know one of their starting safeties had gotten hurt, so that helped the Steelers' cause there.
Yeah, the other safety kind of took not a great angle on Parker when he got through the line, and that's why Parker was really fast, but that helped.
Yeah, he might have been able to hold him with like a 20-yard gain or something,
right.
But once Parker just outran him at that point.
It was really unbelievable because the offense for the Steelers had done nothing the whole game up to that point, and the only reason they had a touchdown was because Ben had thrown that like kind of a miracle backyard runaround play on like 3rd and 28.
Well, then the option, they kind of ran the option.
Right.
And he dove, maybe made the end zone, maybe he didn't. Yeah.
Right. So, and then that was what I remember was the first play of the second half. They tried to throw like a 10-yard out to Hines Ward, and it was incomplete. And Ben threw it too short. So you're just like, okay, here we go. We're going to go 3 and out again. And then it's 2nd and 10. And being a Steeler fan for all the years that I'd been a Steeler fan and all the years that Bill Cowher had been the coach, I could have told you it's like a guarantee that they're going to run the ball here, right? Like they just threw an incomplete pass on first down. They're going to hand off on second down to make it 2nd and 6 or whatever they can get to make it third and manageable. That was the most obvious to me at least, that was the most obvious running play in the world. And you would have never expected that to be a 75-yard touchdown.
Well, Seattle apparently didn't. So,
well, Seattle played just an awful, awful game. But it was all the refs' fault. So, here's a fun fact: 34 counter pike ends up being a staple in the Steelers' offense for years to come. Jonathan Dwyer, Steve, do you remember Jonathan Dwyer, running back?
No, not at all.
Well, he was a running back for the Steelers. 6 years later, he has a 76-yard run against the Tennessee Titans on 34 counter pike and remember at that point, different head coach, different offensive coordinator, and they're still running 34 counter pike. So
keep that play in the playbook.
Keep that play in the playbook. I mean, if you have a guard like Alan Faneca, it usually helps probably more than if you have just an average guard. All right, the 2005 Steelers season was a magical one. You know what else was magical was the 2009 Penguin season. It's also another one we did an entire episode on. Another amazing story, how the Penguins lost to the Red Wings in 2008, then get a chance for redemption in 2009, even after Hall of Famer Marian Hossa has switched sides. And this time, it all comes down to Game 7 in Detroit for all the marbles, as Mike Lang famously stated.
Yeah.
And in that game, in the first period, the Penguins get a goal from Max Talbot. And then in the second period, the Penguins get a goal from
Max Talbot.
Gill with the Penguins. Wants Kennedy to take possession. He'll go to Scuderi. Got bumped on the boards by Draper. The puck free, though, off the near side. Here comes Talbot back again. With Kennedy over the right side. Talbot shoots. He scores! Max Talbot beats goaltender Osgood like a rented mule. And the Penguins take a 2-0 lead. Talbot, his second.
Yep, Max Talbot.
Yeah. The Penguins went on like a 39-minute power play penalty kill for the rest of the game. I swear.
That's certainly what it felt like. I in all the years I've watched sports, Steve, I can't think of a time when I've been more like nervous than the last, like you said, period and a half of that game.
They just stop playing offense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was. You're right. It was. That's a great way to describe it. It was like a 32-minute penalty kill at that point.
Yeah.
And Detroit does get one goal. I mean, Talbot had both goals, so I mean, he would have had the game-winning goal either way. But because Detroit got that one goal in the third period, that second goal, the one we just played, it ends up being the game winner. But yeah, that was the most nerve-wracking. I probably lost a good 5 or 10 years off my life just from watching that game 7. But it was worth it because, as we all know, the game comes down to the final seconds. Marc-Andre Fleury makes an all-time great save, and the Penguins win the Stanley Cup. And again, unlikely hero Max Talbot gets the goal. And I think, Chris Osgood was a pretty good goaltender, but he did not take a good angle on that play. It was a 2-on-1, and he tried to cheat a little bit too much to the one side. And if you freeze frame it, he thought he was going to pass. And if you freeze frame it, he's really out of position when Talbot shoots the puck, and that's why it goes by him. So a mistake on his part. But again, it's like a soccer goalie. Sometimes you just have to guess because, because if Talbot does pass and you're cheating over to Talbot's side, then whoever he would have passed to would have beat him. So that's the championship winning goal of that season. And then the last entry in this great players making great plays category is the 2016 Stanley Cup Finals. The Penguins are playing the Sharks in San Jose in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. They had a 1-0 lead in the second period, but the Sharks have just tied it up. And so it's kind of a deflating moment for Matt Murray, the Penguins goaltender, who really had been stellar up to that point. And the San Jose fans are also now ramped up. I mean, that was Game 6. They were trying to win that game to send it to a Game 7 back in Pittsburgh. The fans, are so excited because now it's 1-1. Now we've got all the momentum, right? If you're a Sharks fan, and just really not very long later, just a few minutes later, the Penguins answer, and once again, a Hall of Fame player stepping up to make a Hall of Fame play.
Turning back with the puck, going to the goal line, goes behind the net, throw it in front for Hornquist. Can't get across, he won't. Letang, shot, score! Chris Letang makes it off Martin Jones on the setup from Crosby, and the Penguins take the lead 2-1. Oh, get that dog off my lawn.
It's a really great goal by Letang. I mean, he pretty much has like no angle there, Steve.
Yeah.
And he still manages to bank it off the pads of Martin Jones, the San Jose goaltender.
Yeah, who had the empty netter here? Didn't somebody have an empty netter? Like, was that?
It was Hornquist.
Or was it Hagelin?
It was Hagelin the year after that against Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it was Hornquist.
And it was Hornquist, I believe.
And this was after like Game 5. We had lost Game 5. That was like that epic Game 5 where we thought we were finally going to see a championship in Pittsburgh in our lifetime.
Right. That's right.
I know we're so spoiled. We want one to happen here, but
yeah,
that's as close as anybody's come since another championship that'll be on this list, I'm sure, later. But
I will say, Steve, we were just talking about the Red Wings game. If you compare that to this game, when Letang scores that goal, there's about 12 minutes left in the second period, which is right around the same time Talbot scored his second goal. But I don't remember really being like on the edge of my seat.
No, because they were better. They like possessed the puck down in the Sharks' end and stuff, and they didn't get the Sharks didn't get very many chances.
I think I don't have this in front of me, so I'm just going off memory. But I think San Jose only had something like 2 shots on net the entire third period.
Yeah.
Whereas the Red Wings were like you said, it was like a power play. They were just constantly throwing things at the net, almost getting stuff by Fleury. This one was much more like low drama, ho hum, and then like you said, they get an empty netter. The Penguins win the Stanley Cup, and that goal by Letang ends up being the cup winner. So let's go into our third category, which is dramatic moments. These are game-winning scores that, are either our iconic plays or last-second heroics or that kind of a thing. And we're going to start with Super Bowl 14 between the Steelers and the Rams. We recently did an entire episode on this game, so please go back and listen to that. So much context and drama and things that you didn't realize kind of how how interesting that game was. I think I didn't, at least until we did the episode on it. But it's a really close game, and the Steelers are actually losing in the fourth quarter, and they have 3rd and 8 from their own 27-yard line. And at that point, you really don't want to punt it back to the Rams. You're already losing. You're running out of time to make a comeback. And so Terry Bradshaw dials up a play called 60 prevent slot hook and go. It's a play that the Steelers have never run before in a live game. And it's a play that they run 8 times in practice that week and have never once completed. So let's see what happens when they run it here in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl.
And Bradshaw dropping back. Now Bradshaw pumping, firing downfield. There goes Stallworth. He pulls it in at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a touchdown for Pittsburgh on the ball to Stallworth. And Stallworth beat Rod Perry. Oh, did he beat him? And the Steelers fire right back on the arm of Terry Bradshaw. 73 yards.
Yeah, I think, Steve, what did you say in that episode? Bradshaw has ADD because
Yeah.
there's no way you should call that play at that moment. But he's just like, heck, let's heave a bomb for Stallworth.
Yeah.
And he makes a great throw. Stallworth makes a great catch. And it gives the Steelers a game-winning score, and it becomes one of the most iconic plays in team history, which is saying a lot for the Steelers because they have a lot of really good candidates for that category of iconic plays.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Whatever it was, Terry was a stroke of genius on his part. And remember, he called his own plays back then, so he didn't really have an offensive coordinator. I mean, I guess that position wouldn't start till Tom Moore many years later.
Right.
So,
yep.
So, good for Terry, and Stallworth, always another Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. All right. Well, we talked about the Steelers beating the Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl and the Penguins beating the Minnesota North Stars in the Stanley Cup Finals. Let's talk about when the Pirates beat the team that would become the Minnesota Twins in the World Series. That would be the 1925 World Series between the Pirates and the Washington Senators, who are now the Twins. And it all comes down to Game 7 at Forbes Field. We did an entire episode on this team too, so go back and listen to that if you're interested. Steve did a really good job researching and fleshing out that season. Kind of a, one of those things that
this hit has a controversy too. I remember that. I went over it because this game's played in a rainstorm.
Correct. Yeah. So just to summarize, the Pirates have clawed their way back from a 3-1 deficit in the series, but now in Game 7 they have to face the big train, Walter Johnson. And, this was 100 years ago, so people might not really be familiar with Walter Johnson, but he's arguably the greatest pitcher of all time. I mean, Steve, he's got to be top 5, right?
I think I went over that episode. Like they said, he probably threw over 90 miles an hour back in 1925. So
yeah,
because they took him to how they measure bullet speed with a chronograph and had him throw through the thing, and it was hey, that's pretty fast. Did some math and.
Yeah, that's
they didn't have radar guns back then.
No, they didn't.
1925, they didn't have a radar. So.
Well, and you could cite a lot of stats. I think he's got over 400 wins, which other than Cy Young, nobody else can say that. But throw the stats away. Here's one thing that's really impressive about Walter Johnson. Ty Cobb admitted to literally being afraid of Walter Johnson, and I'm pretty sure Ty Cobb wasn't afraid of anybody or anything.
Yeah.
And he said that when he got up to the plate against Walter Johnson, it was scary. So this Game 7, Steve said, it's crazy. It's raining. It's muddy. It's a back and forth game. There's some controversial calls. Washington has the lead in the bottom of the 8th inning with Johnson pitching. So bottom of the 8th inning, and they have the lead. You're down to your final 5 or 6 outs at that point. And when you have, this legend on the mound, that lead seems pretty safe. In fact, a bunch of fans at Forbes Field start heading towards the exit because even 100 years ago, Pittsburghers still needed to beat the traffic.
They needed to beat the traffic to the streetcar.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The Pirates rally, though, to tie it. And then Kiki Kyler comes to the plate with the bases loaded. Johnson actually gets ahead in the count. and Kyler's down to his final strike, but he rips a hit down the right field line. The ball goes into the bullpen for a ground rule double, and it gives the Pirates a 2-run lead. They then retire all 3 Senator batters in the top of the 9th, and the Pirates are world champions. 1925.
Yeah, and the right fielder said, I think that's the one where the right fielder said that ball, he thought it bounced foul.
Yeah.
They couldn't really see the fair foul lines because
Yep.
the rain.
The rain and the mud. And
Yeah.
Steve, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but had they outlawed the spitball at that point? Because remember, late in the games, so late in the games back then, the ball wasn't white anymore. It was brown. Remember?
No, wait a minute. When did Ruth come into the league? They might have. Yeah,
They
they might have.
They might have outlawed it a few years before.
But then
this.
there was guys that were like grandfathered in because one of their pitchers was still allowed to throw spitballs.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah,
but I think it was illegal, but it was like still like if you had been before that, you were still allowed to throw spitballs. That's crazy.
Okay. A few years before this, there was a guy for the Cleveland Indians.
He got hit in the head.
Yeah.
By a spitball, and that's why they outlawed it.
Correct. Yeah, that's what happened.
And like you said, they would take the ball and dirty it up and mash it up, but that was more like 1910s. But I think when Babe Ruth came around and like they needed like put butts in the seats, get people in the stands.
Yeah.
They like people like chicks dig the long ball, so even in 1920s they did so.
So what could have happened on that play is the ball wasn't really white. It was kind of muddy.
Yeah.
And they weren't using like tons of different balls like they do now. They probably had 1 or 2 game balls. So that could have influenced, whether or not the umpire saw it go foul or not. But hey, whatever. Pirates win.
They tried to go to the Movie Tone News replay, but
yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Not quite enough clarity to make the right call there. The New York Times says in their write-up of the game, quote, "No World Series has ever come to the sensational climax which marked the feverish finish of today's game." So Kiki Kyler playing hero in the bottom of the 8th inning. Let's talk about now the 2017 Stanley Cup Finals. The Penguins are going for their 5th cup. They're facing the Nashville Predators in Nashville for Game 6. Predators are facing elimination, so their backs are against the wall. They're playing hard. Pekka Rinne is the goaltender for Nashville. He's shutting out the Penguins, but fortunately, Matt Murray is the goaltender for the Penguins, and he's shutting out the Predators. So it's a scoreless tie with only 95 seconds left in regulation. Looks like this defensive struggle is headed into sudden death overtime until this happens.
Kunitz to the outside, got it back to Schultz, and a shot went wide. Rebound off the boards. They score! The Penguins have scored. It is Hornquist. A bounce off the boards was shaken in, and Hornquist, who has not played a lot in the game, made the most of the time that time, and it's 1-0.
Oh, Doc Emmerich sounded shocked. It's 1-0. You know what? There's certain like players that you fear, like Tom Brady, Joe Montana. If Pittsburgh had a basketball team, Michael Jordan, I'm sure would have been one of those people. Like, I'm trying to think of like a hockey equivalent who would like the Penguins always killed the Penguins. Like, I don't know who killed the Penguins over the years. I don't know. But anyway, I'm sure there was somebody like that. Dale Hunter. I don't know. Sure. But like there were other players on the opposite side of that you knew when you were playing them, you weren't really afraid of them at all. Like they might be good players, but you knew somehow, some way that the Pittsburgh sports team would beat them. It's like the Penguins and anybody in the Washington Capitals uniform. The Steelers apparently in Vinny Testaverde, like they've always had Vinny's number.
Yeah.
And like Pekka Rinne definitely falls into that category. He's not a bad goalie. He's a pretty good goalie, but for whatever reason, the Penguins absolutely have his number, and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, they had it. They had it here, and he. I mean, he really
He
held
played
them
better
off.
at home than he did here.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah. I'm on, and he. I mean, again, he held them scoreless for until there was a minute 35 left in the game. But Patrick Hornquist, who he was always so good at being like that net front presence that the Penguins had.
it was
lacked.
a dirty goal. Yeah, it like bounced off the back of the goalie.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, in a 0-0 game, that's always going to be the kind of goal you're going to get. You're never going to get like a pretty breakaway 2-on-1 beautiful pass.
Yeah.
In a game like that, it's going to be a dirty goal, and that was Hornquist's specialty. So he was standing right there. He puts in the rebound, and the Penguins win their fifth Stanley Cup. All right, next on the list is Super Bowl 43, another game for the ages, another game we did an entire episode on. The Steelers are playing the Cardinals, and after James Harrison and Larry Fitzgerald both make amazing plays for their respective teams, Arizona has a 3-point lead in the final moments. But Ben Roethlisberger, as he did so many times in his career, drives the team all the way down the field, and with only 42 seconds left, this happens.
Ben gets the snap. He's back. He pumps. He scrambles around, throws it back corner of the end zone. Santonio with a touchdown! Santonio home! I don't know how he did it!
Yeah,
I love the Tunch clip. You ever heard the Tunch clip? He's like, "What a catch! What a game!"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is great. I mean, I don't know what else we can really say about this play, Steve. I mean, it's a moment that'll be relived forever. It should be a statue at some point. Santonio making that catch. I think all of us that lived through that will never forget it, right?
Yeah, I just remember it happening and just like, it's a catch. And there's still like Cardinals fans like, "Oh, it wasn't a catch." Yes, he got both toes down.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
get over it.
It's a catch.
It's not really even close, quite honest. They reviewed it, but I didn't ever think it was all that close. But
No, it was. I mean, they had to review it. It was too big of a thing and too close to mess it up. But it was definitely a catch. Santonio Holmes' career here was relatively short. But boy, I don't know that I could ever say that I've seen any Pittsburgh athlete in any sport more dominant, maybe as dominant, but not more dominant than Holmes was in that postseason. He like willed the Steelers to a Super Bowl. And then that was kind of almost it for him. But
yeah,
he'll never be forgotten because of that.
he had that big he had a divisional and a championship game. He was both
Yeah.
good in.
Yeah, huge in both of those games. Yep.
Do you have a
All right.
punt return in one of those? In the divisional, I think he had a punt.
Yeah, against the Chargers, he had a punt return touchdown, and then against the Ravens in the championship
He had a
game.
nice catch, on Ben, one of those scramble Ben run
Yep.
around plays. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. And then obviously in the Super Bowl, he's the MVP. So, and he had a huge season, that season too. But it really came alive in the playoffs, and it was kind of like him and Larry Fitzgerald trying to one up each other. And it kind of just came down to who had the ball last, or who had the ball last with enough time to do anything.
Yeah.
And it was Santonio. So,
Well, we were headed if Kurt Warner gets that throw off and that ball's fluttering in the end zone with Larry Fitzgerald lurking and Ike Taylor guarding him. That could have been ugly.
that could have been scary. Fortunately, what was it,
this play
Woodley?
wouldn't mean anything. Yeah.
Was it Woodley that made Warner
It
fumble?
was yes, it was Woodley.
And I
Yeah,
think
'cause it was
Kiesel recovered it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Great game. Great moment. Great memory. Super Bowl 43. So we're down to our last one, and we saved the best for last. The greatest and most remembered game-winning score of all 16 Pittsburgh Pro Sports Championships. I don't even need to set this one up.
And the Yankees have tied the game in the top of the ninth inning. Well, a little while ago when we mentioned that this one in typical fashion was going right to the wire, little did we know. Mark Ditbar throws. Here's a swing and a high fly ball going deep to left. They do it. Back to the wall goes Berra. It is over the back home run. The Pirates win. Ladies
can you say? It was amazing. What a game.
Yeah.
Maz is in the Hall of Fame. Probably more for that than anything else. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's an amazing moment. As you said, it's an amazing game. Steve actually, Steve took us through that whole game and that in a different episode. It really a ton of drama that even led up to that moment. And then
that in the
like
1925, you don't realize how much happened in those 2 game 7s. I mean, those are 2 of the, like the 71 and the 79 don't have as much drama as those 2 do.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, in my opinion, except for Howard Cowell being annoying. I'm sure if Howard was around the 1925 or 1960 would have been absolutely unsufferable. But it's always fun to watch the Ken Burns special and watch like Billy Crystal and all the Yankees fans cry about that game.
Yeah. Yeah, that had to have been so sad because they never had any other moments to celebrate.
Yeah, they didn't win like 5 World Series before that.
Yeah. The 71 and 79 kind of had like those one big moments, like the Pagan double and the Clemente home run in 71, and then the Stargell home run in 79. But this, like you said, this in 25, it was like a bunch of back and forth drama, and then it all kind of like led up to this one big play.
Yeah, I think in 25, wasn't there was a dropped pop-up or something, and then I think in this one Tony Kubik gets hit in the throat with on a weird play. And yeah, it's definitely like a lot of fluky stuff happens.
It is a lot of back and forth, a lot of fluky stuff. Interesting too that the all 5 Pirate championships happened in Game 7. So
we're automatic in Game 7.
Yeah. And like we said, 1 that was a blowout, 2 that were close and kind of had like 1 or 2 big plays, and then the other 2 were just wild, insane affairs. But definitely the Mazeroski home run, is probably the signature moment in Pittsburgh sports history. It's the only time ever in the history of Major League Baseball that you've had that happen where someone won the World Series in Game 7 on a walk-off home run. So that another moment that will be relived forever.
I don't think and I think that's the last time a championship has been won in the city. So
that's correct. Yeah. That's very true. So something to shoot for. So hopefully
the only 2 teams that could do it will be the Pirates and the Penguins. So
unless the Steelers build that big retractable roof stadium and host the Super Bowl someday. Maybe that.
I don't see that happening, but I say if New York can host the Super Bowl, why can't us?
Yep. Let's write those emails to Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening.
I'm sure he is. I can't imagine why he wouldn't. So that's our list. Those are the 16 game-winning scores. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope we have more championship winning scores in the future to do a sequel episode on. But for now, thank you all so much for listening. We really, really appreciate the support of you guys listening. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us via email, via our website. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter. All those links are in the show description, and we'll catch you next time.